My father slid a bankruptcy worksheet across the conference table and tapped my name with one finger. Beside it, someone had typed unauthorized transfers and $92,000. 6 months earlier, my parents had told half our family that I stole that money. Now they wanted me to sign the same lie so their bankruptcy would look cleaner. My mother sat beside him with her purse in her lap. My brother, Ryan, kept staring at the carpet. Between us lay my father's old cloth-bound ledger, the book he had used since I was a child. One page held 2 neat columns. The first was labeled "What Happened?" The second was labeled "What We Tell the Attorney." My name appeared in the second column 7 times. They thought the ledger would help me organize their story. They did not know I had already read the letter tucked inside its back cover. My father had written it before anyone accused me. It promised Ryan that if questions came, they would say I had handled the accounts and misunderstood his transfers. The blame had not been panic. It had been planned. My name is Chloe Bennett. I'm 38, and I manage internal audits for a packaging company in Columbus, Ohio. I spend my workdays finding the exact point where a small mistake becomes a serious lie. That morning, the lie was sitting across from me in my mother's careful smile. I had one decision to make. I could protect the people who framed me, or I could finally make them explain every line. Before I tell you how we reached that table, take a moment to subscribe. And tell me in the comments what you would have done when your own parents handed you a lie with your name already typed on it. I used to think I knew my answer. Then the people asking were the 2 people who had raised me. My father, Martin, believed every household needed a ledger. He did not trust budgeting apps, automatic categories, or any number he could not write by hand. His ledger was dark green, wrapped in worn cloth with a black elastic band around the cover. It lived in the second drawer of his desk in our house outside Dayton. When I was 9, Dad taught me to balance a checkbook at the kitchen table. He drew a line down the middle of a yellow pad. Money in went on the left, money out went on the right. If the totals did not match, he said, you did not guess. You went back until you found the reason. I loved the order of that rule. My mother, Elaine, loved order too, but only when she controlled it. She ran our home with labeled bins, meal plans, and a calendar that assigned every person a job. She could organize a church fundraiser before breakfast. She could also turn a request into a command without changing her tone. Would you mind meant yes. We need to talk meant she had already decided. Ryan was 4 years younger than me. He was funny, restless, and good with his hands. He could rebuild a porch but lose the receipt before the stain dried. Teachers called him bright but unfocused. Mom called him misunderstood. When I forgot something, I needed to be more responsible. When Ryan forgot something, somebody should have reminded him. That difference followed us into adulthood. I studied accounting at a state university and took the first steady job I could get. Ryan tried community college, then roofing, then custom cabinets. Each start was treated like proof he had found his future. Each ending was blamed on a boss, a partner, the market, or bad timing. I was not jealous of Ryan. That would have been easier. I worried about him, and I admired the parts of him that were brave. He could walk into a room of strangers and make 3 friends before I found a chair. He took risks I would never take. The problem was that our parents treated every risk he took as a bill the rest of us should help pay. When I was 34, Dad had a minor heart procedure. He recovered well, but Mom panicked about bills. She asked me to help them set up online payments and review their accounts once a month. I agreed. Dad gave me read-only access. I could see statements and payment history, but I could not transfer money. For almost 3 years, the arrangement was boring. I checked that the mortgage cleared. I flagged a duplicate insurance draft. I helped Dad cancel a service he had forgotten. Once a month, I emailed a short summary. Dad printed each one and tucked it into the green ledger. He told everyone I had a head for numbers. Ryan opened Harbor Ridge renovations during that time. The name sounded larger than the business. At first, it was Ryan, one used truck, and a folding table in his garage. He worked hard. His first customers loved him. He sent photos of finished kitchens, new decks, and a blue front door that made Mom cry because she was so proud. I was proud too. I helped him choose simple bookkeeping software. I showed him how to separate deposits from income and how to save for taxes. He listened for 2 weeks. Then he said the software slowed him down. Mom laughed and told me not everyone wanted to live inside a spreadsheet. The first sign of trouble came in late spring. Dad's checking account was lower than I expected. Not dangerously low, but wrong. I compared the statement with his usual bills and found a transfer to Harbor Ridge Renovations. It was labeled Materials Advance. The amount was large enough to notice. I called Dad and asked about it. He said Ryan had a customer who was late paying a deposit. Dad had covered lumber for a few days. Ryan would put it back by Friday. I wrote a note in my monthly summary. Friday came. Nothing returned. The next month there were 2 more transfers. When I asked again, Mom answered. She said Ryan had landed a major renovation and needed working cash. This is what families do, she told me. We help before the bank decides someone is worth helping. I reminded her that the money came from their retirement savings. She said I was making a short bridge sound like a disaster. I asked Ryan for a repayment plan. He sent a thumbs-up symbol, then called Mom. 10 minutes later, she called me back. Her voice had sharpened. You are not his lender, she said. You are his sister. Stop making him feel like a criminal for accepting help from his parents. I did not think Ryan was a criminal. I thought he was drowning. Those were different things, and our family had always confused them. Drowning people need help. They also need someone to admit there is water. Mom preferred to call the water temporary and hand him another weight. That summer, the transfers continued. Some were labeled materials. Others said payroll or permit. Dad stopped answering questions in writing. If I emailed, he called. If I asked for an invoice, Mom accused me of humiliating Ryan. My monthly summaries became shorter because every fact started an argument. I made my first mistake then. I kept helping. I told myself my access let me protect my parents. I thought that if I stopped looking, the transfers would grow. I did not understand that my presence was giving them something more useful than oversight. It gave them a future explanation. By August, I saw a transfer that pushed the total far beyond a temporary bridge. I drove to Dayton after work. Dad's green ledger sat open on the kitchen table. The amount was there in his handwriting, followed by Ryan's initials. I pointed to it and asked when the money would come back. Mom set down 4 plates for dinner as if we were discussing weather. She said Ryan had a commercial job delayed by an inspection. Dad said the profit would cover everything. Ryan arrived 20 minutes later with a bakery box and a story about a customer who had changed tile after installation. I listened. Then I asked one question. How much does the business owe Mom and Dad right now? Ryan looked at Dad. Dad looked at Mom. Mom opened the bakery box. No one answered. I reached for the ledger, but Dad closed it and pulled the elastic around the cover. It's handled, he said. That is not a number. It's family, Mom said, not an audit. Ryan pushed his chair back. I knew this was a mistake. For 1 second, I thought he meant taking the money. He meant letting me know about it. Mom followed him into the hall and told him not to let my tone ruin dinner. Dad stared at the closed ledger. I sat alone with 4 empty plates and understood that the numbers were not the only thing being hidden. I told Dad I would no longer review the accounts unless they gave me full and honest information. He rubbed his forehead. Your mother is scared, he said. Ryan has employees now. Families depend on him. You and Mom depend on that retirement money. We have the house. That is not the same as cash. He looked toward the hall. Just give us a little time. I gave them 30 days. It felt measured and reasonable, and it was also another mistake. During those 30 days, they did not solve the problem, and they built a story about who had caused it. The accusation began at a Sunday lunch at my aunt's house. I was not there. I learned about it from a cousin who called me from her car before dessert. She asked if I had taken money from my parents' retirement account. Her question was so direct that I thought I had misheard her. I asked where she got that idea. She went quiet. Then she said Mom had told the table there were serious irregularities in the accounts I managed. Dad had added that they were trying to handle it privately. Ryan had stared at his plate. No one had said the word theft, but everyone at that table knew what story they were being invited to finish. I called Mom. She answered on the first ring. I asked her to tell me exactly what she had said. She gave a small sigh, the one she used when she wanted me to feel childish. I said money is missing, she replied. That is true. Money was transferred to Ryan's company. You had access, view-only access. You were helping us. I could not move a dollar. Mom paused. Then you should be able to explain what happened. I told her the bank could explain it. Every online transfer carried an access record. Every branch withdrawal had a slip. We could sit down together the next morning and ask for the full history. She said Dad was tired and Ryan was embarrassed. She did not want strangers digging through a private family matter. That answer changed the shape of the conversation. A person who truly thought money had been stolen would want the bank to look, and my mother wanted a rumor, not an investigation. A rumor could point at me without ever landing on a fact. I told her to correct the story before the day ended. She said she would clear up any confusion. I knew that phrase. It meant she planned to soften the edges while leaving the center untouched. I asked for one sentence in the family group chat. Chloe did not take our money and could not make transfers. Mom refused. I won't accuse your brother just to make you comfortable. You already accused me. No one accused you. My cousin asked if I stole from you. Then your cousin is dramatic. She ended the call. 10 minutes later, Dad texted that we should all cool down, and Ryan sent nothing. By evening, the family group chat was full of careful sympathy aimed at my parents, and not one person asked me for the account records. The next morning, I removed myself from online access. The bank required Dad to approve the change, so I called him while I was in the parking lot at work. He sounded surprised. Why would you do that now? Because you are telling people I mishandled money. We never used that word. You don't have to. You put my name next to missing retirement funds. He lowered his voice. Your mother is trying to protect everyone. She is protecting Ryan. He has children. So do other people who run businesses. They still keep records. Dad approved the removal. Before we hung up, he said, "This is going to look like you are walking away." I remember gripping the steering wheel. Even my attempt to stop being blamed could be turned into evidence against me. At work, I told my supervisor, Dana, that a false family accusation might reach the company. I did not give her every detail. I said my parents had transferred money to my brother, then implied I had caused the loss. Dana listened without interrupting. She asked whether company systems or clients were involved. I said no. She thanked me for telling her early. I felt foolish and relieved. My job involved reviewing expense reports, vendor controls, and fraud risks. Trust was not a soft quality in my office. It was part of the work. I could not pretend a theft rumor did not matter. 3 days later, Human Resources called me into a small conference room. Someone had sent an anonymous email to our ethics address. It said a manager in internal audit had been accused of taking money from elderly parents. The message included my full name, my title, and the city where my parents lived. The email did not come from a stranger. Very few people knew all 3 details. I asked to see the wording. The investigator said she could summarize it but not share the sender information. My hands went cold anyway. The phrase, elderly parents, sounded like my mother. She had started calling herself elderly at 62 whenever she wanted a favor. I was placed on paid administrative leave while the company reviewed whether I had disclosed any outside financial issue. Dana looked angry on my behalf, but policy was policy. I packed my laptop into a gray tote while people pretended not to watch. No one treated me like a criminal. That almost made it worse. In the elevator, I called Mom. I did not ask if she sent the email. I told her what had happened. She was silent for several seconds. Then she said, "Maybe this is a chance for you to prove there is nothing to hide." That was the moment I stopped wondering. Did you send it? I am not discussing anonymous correspondence. Did you tell someone else to send it? Chloe, your father and I are under tremendous stress. I leaned against the elevator wall. You put my career at risk. You keep acting like you are the only person who can be hurt. She hung up. I stood in the lobby with my tote at my feet and watched employees move around me, and the building had glass walls. I had never felt more visible. Dana called me that Friday. She said the company had found no issue with my disclosures, my work, or my personal financial history. The review would close after one final interview. Her voice softened. "I'm sorry this happened," she said. "You did the right thing by telling me first." I thanked her and cried after we hung up, but not because I thought I had lost my job. I cried because a person outside my family had looked at the same facts, reached the obvious conclusion, and reminded me how steady that felt. Before the final interview, I requested a letter confirming that the allegation was unsubstantiated. Human Resources agreed. I also asked them to preserve the anonymous email. I did not know whether I would ever need it. I only knew I was done trusting memory when other people were writing versions of me. My parents did not apologize. Instead, Dad sent a message to the family group chat. He wrote that the matter had been reviewed and that everyone should respect our privacy. It did not say I was innocent. It did not say the money went to Ryan. It treated my reputation like noise that should now settle. I replied once. I wrote that I had never transferred, withdrawn, or taken money from my parents. I said the bank could verify it. I also said I would not discuss the issue privately with anyone who had repeated the accusation without asking me for evidence. Mom called within a minute. I let it ring. She called again, then Dad called, then my aunt. The group chat went silent. My correction was considered more disruptive than the accusation because it named what everyone had been avoiding. 2 weeks after I returned to work, I scheduled a meeting at my parents' bank. I told Dad the appointment was only to obtain access records and settle the accusation. He agreed by text. The morning of the meeting, he canceled. He said Mom had a migraine. I offered to reschedule. He said the bank had already told him online records were limited. That was not true. I knew because I had called the bank with him present months earlier. I reminded him. He stopped replying. I drove to Dayton anyway. I did not go to the bank. I went to my parents' house. Mom opened the door but kept one hand on the frame. She looked tired. For a moment, I saw my mother rather than the person fighting me. I asked to see Dad's green ledger. Her expression changed. Why? Because he records every transfer. That book is private. You use the missing money publicly. You are obsessed with being right. I am trying to clear my name. She folded her arms. Your name is fine. You went back to work. The sentence was so casual that I almost lost my temper. You do not get credit because the damage was temporary. Mom looked past me toward my car. Ryan may lose his business. Your father may lose the future he worked for, yet all you talk about is a few uncomfortable days at work. Those days happened because you sent a lie there. I sent nothing. She said it too quickly. I asked again. She stepped back and began closing the door. Before it shut, she said, "When this is over, you will understand why we did what we had to do." That was not a denial. It was a promise that the truth would still be arranged around their needs. For the next 2 months, I heard about my family through other people. Mom told relatives that I had chosen my career over my parents. Dad said we were taking space. Ryan posted photos of finished projects as if Harbor Ridge was thriving. I stopped checking his page after I noticed the same kitchen appear under 3 different captions. I did not block anyone. I muted them. That difference mattered to me then. Blocking felt final, and I was not ready to admit that my parents might prefer a lie to a relationship with me. I still expected one of them to wake up ashamed and call with the truth. Instead, a certified envelope arrived from their bank. Dad had requested copies of the access history, and because my name had been connected to the account, the bank sent me the portion involving my credentials. The report was simple. My login had viewed statements. It had never initiated a transfer. The same packet showed that the transfers to Harbor Ridge had been approved through Dad's phone and confirmed by a code sent to Mom's number. The bank did not accuse anyone. It did not need to. The records answered the only question my parents had pretended was unclear. I scanned the packet. Then I emailed a copy to both of them with one request. I asked for a written correction to the family and to my employer. I did not ask them to shame Ryan. I did not demand an apology. I asked them to say that I had no role in moving the money. Dad replied first, "Let's talk in person." Mom replied 6 minutes later, "Sending bank records around will only create more pain." I wrote back that pain had already been sent around. The records were the correction. Neither answered. That night, Dad called from his car. I could hear a turn signal clicking. He said Mom was overwhelmed. He said Ryan's biggest customer had refused final payment over a dispute. He said the business could recover if everyone stopped panicking. I listened until he ran out of reasons, then I asked why he let Mom accuse me, and the turn signal stopped. Traffic moved around him. "I never said you stole anything," he said. "You told the family there were irregularities in accounts I managed." That was true from where I sat. You knew the transfers went to Ryan. I knew money was moving. Your mother handled some of it. Your phone approved them. He breathed out. "We all use each other's phones." Then say I did not do it. It is not that simple. It was exactly that simple. The complexity was not in the facts. It was in the consequence. If Dad cleared me, he had to admit he had allowed retirement money to flow into Ryan's business. He also had to admit that Mom used me as cover. He was willing to feel guilty. He was not willing to be seen as responsible. I asked whether he still had the green ledger. His voice tightened. "Of course." "Does it show the transfers?" "It shows household activity." "Does it show Ryan's name?" "Some entries use initials, then bring it to the bank." He said he would think about it. I told him I would not have another private conversation until the correction was sent, and he called that an ultimatum. I called it a condition, and we ended the call without saying goodbye. A week later, my company received a second email. This one was not anonymous. It came from my mother's personal account. She wrote that the family concern had been resolved and that she regretted any misunderstanding created by incomplete information. She did not say the accusation was false. Human Resources forwarded it to me because it referenced my review. Dana read it over my shoulder. "That is not a correction," she said. "No. Do you want the company to respond?" I thought about it. A formal response could scare Mom, but it could also widen the conflict. I said no. I asked them to add her email to the closed file. Dana nodded. She did not tell me what choice to make. She only made sure my choice was recorded. At home, I printed Mom's email and placed it beside the bank report. That was how my work brain protected my personal heart. I created order around things I could not repair. I did not have a navy binder or a numbered case. I had one plain folder labeled Family Account Issue. The name was deliberately dull. I went to counseling for the first time that month. I told the counselor I was not sure whether I belonged there because nothing dramatic was happening anymore. My job was safe. No one was yelling. My parents were simply refusing to tell the truth. She said, "Sometimes the quiet part is where you finally hear the damage." I hated that sentence because it was accurate. I had spent years being useful enough to remain included. Once usefulness became blame, I still tried to earn a fair outcome through perfect behavior. I kept thinking that if I explained clearly, they would choose clarity. The counselor asked what I wanted from my parents. I said I wanted the sentence they refused to write. Chloe did not take our money. She asked what I would do if they never wrote it, and I had no answer. In December, Ryan's business website disappeared. His company page said it was being updated. A former customer posted a complaint about an unfinished bathroom. Another asked where to send a legal notice. I knew enough about business failure to recognize the silence that comes before paperwork. 3 days after Christmas, Ryan came to my apartment without warning. I saw him through the peephole holding a paper grocery bag. He looked thinner. His beard had grown unevenly. For the first time in months, he did not look like the protected son. He looked like a man who had run out of places to stand. I opened the door but did not invite him in. He held up the bag. Mom sent cookies. She has my address. She thought you would throw them away. I probably will. He nodded as if that was fair. Then he asked if we could talk. I told him the hallway was fine. Ryan leaned against the wall. He said Harbor Ridge had lost 2 major jobs and a supplier had frozen his account. He owed payroll taxes and several vendors, and he was trying to sell equipment, but some of it had liens. I asked why he was telling me. He looked down at the bag. Dad said you could help us figure out the cleanest way through. Us, him and Mom, me too, I guess. Did you repay any of their money? Some. How much? I don't know exactly. You own the business. I have a bookkeeper. Then she knows. Ryan rubbed his jaw. She quit. That explained more than he intended. I asked whether the $92,000 had gone into the business. He flinched at the number. Not all at once. That was not my question. Yes, did you tell Mom to blame me? No, did you know she did? He took too long. I knew she was saying you had been involved. Involved how? She said you had approved the plan. I almost laughed. I had warned them to stop, and in our family, objection could be rewritten as management if that was what the story needed. Ryan said Mom was trying to keep Dad from collapsing. Their credit cards were high, and they had borrowed against the house. The business money was gone, and if creditors started asking about transfers, everyone could be exposed. Exposed for what? I asked. He looked at me then. For making bad decisions. Bad decisions are not hidden by accusing someone else. I did not send anything to your work. But you let them keep saying it. He lifted both hands. What was I supposed to do? Tell Dad I ruined his retirement? Tell Mom she backed the wrong kid? Yes. The word came out harder than I expected. Ryan stared at me, and I had never said anything that direct to him. I had spent our whole lives translating responsibility into softer language. He set the cookie bag on the floor. You have always wanted to be right. No. I wanted you to stop letting me be wrong for you. He left the cookies. I threw them away after he went downstairs. Then I pulled the bag back out, removed the tin, and washed it. That ridiculous act bothered me, and part of me still could not waste something my mother had chosen. Ryan's visit was the first major shift. Until then, my parents had acted as if the missing money was a mystery, and now I knew the business had consumed it, their debt had grown, and creditors were close enough to make the truth matter. I also knew they wanted my help. That gave me leverage, but it did not feel like power. It felt like being offered the same old job with a more dangerous title. In January, Dad left a voicemail. He said he and Mom had met with a debt counselor. The counselor suggested they speak with a bankruptcy attorney. Dad's voice cracked on the word bankruptcy. He had paid every bill on time for 40 years. To him, bankruptcy was not a process. It was a public verdict on his character. I listened twice. Then I saved the message. I did not call back. The next day, Mom sent an email with the subject, Practical Next Steps. It contained a list. She wanted me to review their debt, organize the transfer history, and explain which records an attorney would need. At the bottom, she wrote, "This is the kind of situation your training was meant for." My training was not meant to protect them from the truth. Still, I read the email 3 times. I imagined Dad sitting at his desk with the green ledger. I imagined Mom pretending not to be afraid. I imagined Ryan's children hearing that their grandparents might lose the house. Then I made my second major mistake. I replied. I wrote that I would help them gather accurate records if 3 conditions were met. They had to provide complete statements. They had to stop describing me as responsible for the transfers. They had to attend a meeting where the bank access report was reviewed. Mom answered within an hour. Agreed. There was no apology or correction, just one word. I knew it was not enough, but I accepted it because I wanted movement, and I told myself truth could come later, once we had the records open. Dad came to Columbus the following Saturday. He brought 2 cardboard boxes, a laptop, and the green ledger. Seeing the ledger on my dining table pulled me back to childhood. The cloth was frayed at the corners. The black band had been replaced with a red one. Dad placed his palm on the cover. This has everything. It did not. The first pages were careful. Mortgage, utilities, insurance, groceries. Then the entries became vague. Family support. Short bridge. Project advance. Ryan's initials appeared beside some, but not all. I asked Dad why he had changed the labels. He said Mom preferred less judgmental language. I asked whether there were loan agreements. He said Ryan had promised repayment. I asked whether any promise was written. He looked toward my kitchen as if Mom might appear and answer for him. I opened the laptop. The debt was worse than Ryan had said. My parents had used credit cards to cover normal expenses after savings went to the business. They had drawn from a home equity line. They had also guaranteed 1 equipment note for Harbor Ridge. I kept my voice even. You cannot solve this by changing labels. Dad's face reddened. I know that. Then why did you let Mom accuse me? He looked at the ledger. She thought people would give us time if they believed we were sorting out an internal mistake. You mean if they believed I caused it? No one was supposed to contact your company. Mom did. She says she was trying to close the issue. She created the issue. Dad stood and walked to the window. Snow had collected along the balcony rail, and he said Mom was terrified that Ryan would lose his home and his children would suffer. He said she believed I would recover from a rumor because I was stable. The sentence landed with a strange calm. She chose me because I could survive it. Dad did not answer. I had heard versions of that logic my whole life. Chloe can handle disappointment. Chloe has savings. Chloe understands. Chloe does not need as much. Strength had never protected me and my family. It made me the safest place to put damage. Dad turned back. His eyes were wet. I should have stopped her. Yes, I kept thinking I could fix the money first. You cannot fix what happened by hiding why it happened. He nodded. For one dangerous moment, I believed we had reached each other. Then he asked if I could create a clean summary for the attorney that separated household spending from business losses. I said yes if the summary was accurate. I gave him a blank spreadsheet template, and it had columns for date, amount, recipient, purpose, and supporting record. I explained that every transfer should match a bank statement and a real document. Dad thanked me. He hugged me before he left, and I stood in my doorway holding the green ledger because he had forgotten it on the table. I called after him, and he came back, took it, and held it against his chest. That evening, I noticed something odd in the spreadsheet copy saved on my computer. Dad had opened a tab labeled Notes before I emailed the template. The tab was blank when I made it, but the file history showed text had been pasted and deleted. I restored the earlier version. One line appeared. Use Chloe's summary to show she directed transfers. I stared at it until the words blurred. Dad had arrived asking for help, and somewhere during that visit, he had tried to turn my help into proof that I was involved. I called him. He denied typing the line. He said Mom had used his laptop before he left. Then he asked why I was digging through deleted text. The question was almost impressive. Even now, my attention to evidence was treated as the problem. I canceled the template link and changed the file permissions. I told Dad I would only review records in person from then on. He sounded offended. "You said you would help." I said I would help with accurate records. "That is what we are doing." "No. You are building a version." He said I was overreacting to a note without context. I asked what context made the sentence honest. He had none. After we hung up, I added the restored file history to my plain folder. The folder was no longer dull, and it had become a boundary I could touch. A few days later, Mom asked me to come to Dayton. She said the attorney needed a complete household history before the first formal consultation. I reminded her that I would not prepare anything alone. She agreed so quickly that I became more cautious, not less. I drove down on a cold Saturday morning. Dad's car was in the driveway. Ryan's truck was parked behind it. Mom had arranged folders across the dining table and placed sticky notes on each one. The green ledger sat in the center like a judge. Ryan did not greet me. He said we needed to stop treating his business like the only cause of the debt. He listed medical bills, home repairs, and rising prices. Some of that was true. My parents had other expenses. None explained $92,000 sent to Harbor Ridge. I asked for the bank statements. Mom handed me a stack with several pages missing. I asked for the full set. She said those pages were duplicates. I checked the page numbers. They were not. Dad went to his office and returned with the missing pages. Mom watched him place them in front of me. The room changed. Her authority had always depended on people anticipating what she wanted. Dad had just chosen a fact over her preference, even if only for 1 minute. The missing pages showed payments to a supplier Ryan had never mentioned. They also showed checks written directly to him. One memo line said rent. Another said school. The business crisis had become a family subsidy. Ryan said those personal payments were temporary. His wife had reduced her hours after their youngest child got sick. Mom added that no decent grandparent would let children lose their home. I did not argue with the fear. I argued with the lie. "You could have helped him and told the truth," I said. Mom's mouth tightened. "And let everyone watch him fail. You let everyone think I stole. You did not fail." There it was again. In her mind, harm counted only if it destroyed you, and since I still had a job and an apartment, she believed the lie had cost me nothing important. I opened the ledger. Dad had rewritten several entries. Materials advance had become account review adjustment. Ryan rent had become temporary family holding. The new terms made no financial sense. I asked who changed them. Dad looked at Mom, and she said the old labels were too informal for an attorney. I told her an attorney needed truth, not polished wording. Mom slid a typed page toward me. It was called Transfer Explanation. The page said I had recommended moving funds through Harbor Ridge because I believed the company would produce a better return than their savings account. It described me as the family's financial advisor. I read it once. Then I looked at Dad. "Did you write this?" He said it was a draft. "Did you write it?" Mom answered for him. "We wrote it together. I never recommended any transfer." "You gave Ryan bookkeeping advice. That is not investment advice. You reviewed our accounts. I warned you to stop." Ryan leaned forward. "No one is saying you stole now." The sentence made the plan clear. They were offering to reduce the accusation from theft to professional error, and in return, I was supposed to accept responsibility for the same money. I pushed the page back. "This is false." Mom placed both hands flat on the table. "It is a reasonable explanation of how a family decision became confused." "No, it is a lie with softer verbs." Dad asked everyone to calm down. I told him calm was not the issue, and I asked whether the bankruptcy attorney had seen that page. He said not yet. I took out my phone and photographed it. Mom reached across the table, but I pulled the page away, and she said family drafts were private. I said anything using my name belonged in my records. Ryan stood. This is why nobody can talk to you. Because I keep copies. Because you act like we are already in court. You sent a theft accusation to my workplace. Mom told Ryan to sit down. Then she turned to me. Her tone softened. Chloe, your father could lose the house. I looked at Dad. He looked older than he had a month earlier, and his shoulders curved forward. For a moment, guilt pressed against my anger. Mom saw it. She always did. The attorney said intent matters, she continued. If this looks like a family investment that went wrong, there are questions. If it looks like money moved without our understanding, that is different. I asked whether the attorney had actually said that. She looked away. Dad whispered, "We have not met her yet." The consultation was still a week away. Mom had built an explanation for a lawyer she had not spoken to, and she was not responding to legal advice. She was preparing to manage it. I told them I would attend the consultation, but I would not sign, draft, or support any false statement. Mom said my presence would help because I understood the records. I said my presence would help because I understood what the records did not say. Before leaving, I asked Dad to let me scan the ledger. He refused, and he said it contained decades of private household information. I offered to scan only the pages involving Harbor Ridge, and Mom said no. As I put on my coat, Ryan followed me into the front hall. He spoke quietly so our parents would not hear. If you blow this up, Dad will never recover. I did not create the debt. You can make it worse. That is not the same thing. He rubbed his face. What do you want from us? The truth. That does not pay anybody. No, but lies keep charging interest. The phrase sounded sharper than I intended. Ryan gave a tired laugh. There she is. I drove home angry at him and at myself. I had gone there hoping Dad's moment with the missing statements meant something, and I still searched for signs that one correct act would become a pattern. It had not. On Monday, Dad called while I was at lunch. He said Mom had gone to church and he needed to tell me something, and he sounded frightened. He admitted that the green ledger contained a second set of notes. Mom had asked him to create them after the first family lunch, and the notes listed explanations they could use if the bank, creditors, or relatives asked about the transfers. I closed my office door. Does one explanation blame me? Yes. Did you agree to it? A long silence followed. I wrote it down. That answer hurt more than if Mom had written every word. Dad had spent months presenting himself as trapped between us, and he was not trapped. He had held the pen. He said he wanted me to understand the pressure. Mom believed Ryan might lose custody time if his finances collapsed, and Ryan had told them his wife was considering separation. Dad feared the children would blame him for refusing help. I asked when he wrote my name into the plan. He said late summer, before the Sunday lunch, before the anonymous email, and before any supposed confusion had spread. Was there a letter to Ryan? I asked. Dad stopped breathing for a second. I heard it. What letter? You tell me. He said he had written Ryan a note about keeping the family united. He claimed it was not important, and I asked where it was. He said he did not know. I told him to bring the complete ledger to the attorney meeting. I also told him that if my name appeared in any written plan, I would correct the record in the room, and he said he understood. Then he asked me not to tell Mom about the call. I refused. I am not joining another secret. He sounded wounded. I am trying to do the right thing. The right thing does not need me to hide that you considered it. I sent both parents an email summarizing the call. I wrote that Dad had confirmed a second set of notes existed and that the complete ledger must attend the consultation, and Dad did not reply. Mom called 7 times. Her final voicemail was short. You are tearing this family apart to prove a point. I saved it, not because it proved a financial fact. It proved the pressure I would face when facts arrived. The night before the consultation, I barely slept. I kept rehearsing explanations. I imagined Mom crying. I imagined Dad having chest pain. I imagined Ryan accusing me of hurting his children. Every possible outcome placed me in the role of person who caused the consequence by refusing the lie. Around 3 in the morning, I got out of bed and opened the plain folder. I read the bank access report, and I read the human resources closure letter. I read Mom's incomplete correction and the restored spreadsheet note. The facts did not become cruel because my family disliked them. That was the sentence I needed, and I wrote it on a sticky note and placed it inside the folder. The bankruptcy attorney's office was in a low brick building near downtown Dayton. Her name was Rebecca Cole. The waiting room had gray chairs, a water dispenser, and a framed print of a lake. Nothing about it looked dramatic enough for the fear my parents carried inside. Mom arrived in a navy coat and brought a rolling file case. Dad carried the green ledger, and Ryan came last. He said the attorney had asked him to attend because some transfers involved his company. Ms. Cole greeted us with a firm handshake. She was in her 50s, with silver at her temples and reading glasses on a cord. She explained that she represented my parents, not the family. She also said she needed complete and accurate information before advising them. Mom smiled. "That is why Chloe is here." I placed my folder on the table. "I am here to correct any statement about my role." Ms. Cole looked from me to Mom. "Then we should be precise." For the first time in months, precision did not sound like an insult. Dad opened the green ledger. Mom rolled her file case beside her chair, and Ryan stared at the carpet. Then my father slid a bankruptcy worksheet across the table and tapped my name with one finger. I had reached the moment that opened this story. I had read the letter moments earlier, while Ms. Cole copied identification cards. Dad passed me the ledger so I could find the transfer pages. When I loosened the red band, a folded sheet slipped from the back cover and landed against my folder. Dad reached for it. I picked it up first. The letter was dated 3 days before the Sunday lunch at my aunt's house. It was addressed to Ryan in Dad's handwriting. It told him not to discuss the personal checks or the equipment note. If anyone asked about the transfers, Ryan should say I had been monitoring the accounts and believed Harbor Ridge was a temporary investment. The final paragraph was worse. Dad wrote that Mom would handle the family, and they would describe the loss as an accounting error if necessary. He added, "Chloe has always been the one who understands the money. People will accept that she made the call." I read the page twice. Dad whispered my name. I folded the letter and placed it on top of my folder. That was when he slid the worksheet toward me. My name appeared beside $92,000 under the words unauthorized transfers. A blank signature line waited at the bottom. Ms. Cole adjusted her glasses. "Who prepared this worksheet?" Mom answered. "We prepared it from Chloe's summary." "I did not prepare a summary," I said. "I gave my father a blank template. I revoked access when I found a deleted note saying it would be used to show I directed the transfers." I handed Ms. Cole the restored file history, then I gave her the bank access report, and she read in silence. The only sound in the room was the heating vent above us. Mom leaned toward the attorney. "There is context." "I'm sure there is," Ms. Cole said. "But context cannot change who initiated a bank transfer." Dad's face had gone pale. Ryan kept his arms folded, and I opened the ledger to the Harbor Ridge pages. The old labels had been crossed out, and beside them, a second column offered cleaner explanations. "What happened?" I read aloud. "Materials for Ryan, rent for Ryan, payroll for Ryan, equipment payment." Mom said, "Those are Martin's informal notes." I pointed to the other column. "What we tell the attorney, account adjustment, temporary holding, Chloe review error. Family investment directed by Chloe." Ms. Cole looked at Dad. "Did you write both columns?" He swallowed. "Yes." "Were the second entries written when the transactions occurred?" "No." "When were they written?" Dad glanced at Mom. She stared straight ahead. After the questions started, he said, Ms. Cole closed the worksheet. Then this is not a record of the transactions, it is a set of proposed explanations. Mom's voice tightened. We are not trying to deceive anyone. We are trying to describe a complicated family situation in a way that does not destroy 4 households. Only one household received the money, I said. Mine received the blame. Ryan finally looked up. You are acting like I took it at gunpoint. No, you took it because they kept saying yes. I plan to repay it. Where is the plan? He looked at Ms. Cole. We did not formalize it. Mom turned to me. You know your father cannot survive losing this house. Dad flinched. I did too. That was her oldest method. She converted a choice into an emergency, then placed the emergency in my hands. I looked at Dad. Did you know Mom sent the anonymous email to my employer? He closed his eyes. Mom answered. I asked a relative to send a concern. The honesty shocked me, even after everything else. You gave them my title, I said. I believed your company should know there was a financial question. You had the bank records. We did not have them then. You knew the money went to Ryan. She lifted her chin. I knew you were involved in the accounts. With read-only access. You were the expert. There it was. Expertise had become guilt because it was the only thing they could attach to me. I opened my folder and placed the human resources closure letter beside the bank report. Then, I set the letter to Ryan on top. This is what happened, I said. You moved $92,000 to Ryan and helped cover his personal bills. When the money did not come back, you told the family there were irregularities in accounts I managed. Then you carried that accusation to my job. Mom started to speak. I raised my hand. I tried to solve this quietly. I asked for bank records. You canceled the meeting. I asked for one clear correction. You refused. I offered to help gather honest records. You used my template to build another lie. My voice shook. I let it. Being composed did not require pretending I was untouched. Dad said, Chloe, I'm sorry. Mom turned toward him. Martin. He did not look at her. He looked at me. I wrote the letter. I knew what she planned to say at lunch. I thought we would correct it after Ryan repaid us. You thought my name could carry the loss until his business recovered. He nodded once. I had waited months for an admission. It did not feel triumphant. It felt heavy and exact. Mom pressed her lips together. We made choices under pressure. I slid the false worksheet back across the table. Pressure did not type my name. She pushed it toward me again. You can fix the wording. That is all we are asking. That was the line I had heard in 100 smaller forms. Fix the schedule. Fix Ryan's taxes. Fix Dad's password. Fix the story so no one has to face what they chose. I placed my palm on the green ledger. You didn't lose track of your money, I said. You chose where it went and put my name where the consequences belonged. No one interrupted. I turned to Ms. Cole. I said I did not consent to my name being used as an advisor, account manager, transfer initiator, or cause of loss. I gave her a signed statement with the bank report attached. I also gave her copies of the letter, the false worksheet, and the restored file history. Then I took out 3 envelopes. One was addressed to my employer. One was addressed to the relatives in the family group chat. One was addressed to the church board where Mom volunteered. Each envelope contained a short factual correction. It said I had no authority to transfer funds, that the money had been sent to Harbor Ridge with my parents' approval, and that the prior suggestion of wrongdoing by me was false. Mom stared at the envelopes. You would humiliate us publicly. No, I am correcting a public accusation. You will make people think we are dishonest. I am giving you the chance to tell them what was dishonest. I placed 2 copies of the correction on the table. There were signature lines for both parents. I told them I would send my unsigned version before the end of the day. If they signed, I would include their correction. If they refused, I would state that they had declined. Ryan shook his head. You came prepared to burn everything down. I came prepared because you already tried to use me again. Dad picked up the correction. He read every line. Mom told him not to sign anything while upset. Ms. Cole said the choice was his, but she advised all clients to correct statements they knew were false. Dad asked for a pen. Mom's chair scraped the floor. Martin, think about Ryan's children. Dad looked at her. I have been thinking about Ryan's children for years. His voice was tired, not angry. Then he looked at me. I should have been thinking about mine. He signed. The motion was small. The effect was not. My father had spent months saying he was powerless against Mom's fear. Signing his name did not erase what he had done. It proved he had always possessed a hand capable of stopping. Mom refused the pen. She said the correction was too broad. I told her she could propose one accurate change. She read the page twice and found none. Ms. Cole gathered the false worksheet and placed it in a separate folder. She told my parents she would not use it. She also said she could not represent them if they withheld records or supplied a story they knew was untrue. Mom asked whether that was a threat. It is a condition of my work, Ms. Cole replied. I almost smiled. I knew that distinction. Mom's face crumpled. She said she had only wanted to keep Ryan's family together. She said Dad had been waking at night, terrified of losing the house. She said I had always been safe, and Ryan had never been safe a day in his life. I believed that she believed every word. That is why you chose me, I said, not because you thought I did it, because you thought I could take it. She began crying. I wanted to comfort her. The urge rose before thought, trained by years of being the child who restored order. I kept my hands on my folder. I can understand your fear, I said. I will not carry its consequences for you. Mom did not sign, not then. I emailed the correction from the parking lot. Dad's signed copy went with it. I sent the evidence to Human Resources and asked that it be added to the closed file. I sent the family version to every person who had received or repeated the accusation. Then I turned off my phone and drove back to Columbus. I did not feel victorious. I felt exhausted, but the exhaustion belonged to something finished. For the first time, I was not driving home to plan a better explanation. The truth had reached the same rooms as the lie. The consequences were not instant, and they were not cinematic. My parents did not lose everything the next morning. Ryan was not led away in handcuffs. Real consequences moved more slowly. Mom signed the correction 2 days later. She changed no words. Dad emailed it from his own account to the church board and the family. My employer added it to my file. Dana printed a copy, set it on my desk, and said, "This one says what happened." My parents eventually filed their case with complete transfer records. They sold their travel trailer and stopped paying Ryan's household bills. Ryan closed Harbor Ridge, returned equipment that had been purchased with my parents' money, and took a job with a larger contractor. Dad called once to say they were keeping the house under a repayment plan. I was glad. I did not need them homeless to know I had been wronged. I needed them unable to use me as the explanation. For several months, I had no contact with Mom. Dad wrote letters instead of calling. Most were short. He did not ask me to forgive him. He described counseling, the budget class he and Mom attended, and the first month they lived only on their own income. One letter contained the green ledger. Dad wrote that he could no longer look at it without seeing what he had done. I almost mailed it back. Then I opened it. The first pages held my childhood handwriting. Dad had taped in the yellow sheet where 9-year-old me balanced a pretend checkbook to the penny. Near the end were the 2 columns that tried to turn my honesty into cover. I scanned both pages. I kept the signed correction with them. Then I wrapped the red band around the ledger and placed it in the back of my file cabinet. It was not a trophy. It was a complete record. Mom and I have spoken twice since then. Our conversations are polite and limited. She still says she was trying to save the family. I tell her a family cannot be saved by selecting one person to carry a lie. I do not know whether we will ever be close again. I know what closeness will require. No private version, no borrowed reputation, no emergency that makes my name available. For most of my life, I thought being the reliable daughter meant fixing whatever reached my hands. Now I understand that reliability also means refusing work built on false numbers. My father taught me that when a ledger does not balance, you go back until you find the reason. He was right about that. He was wrong about where the loss belonged. If someone in your family has ever blamed the strongest person because they seemed most able to survive it, share your thoughts below. Strength is not permission, and love does not require you to sign your name beneath somebody else's lie.